Who here knows about Graham Linehan? Graham Linehan is an Irish writer, comedy guy, turned right-wing weirdo. All right? Graham Linehan has decided to spend the rest of his life arguing against trans people, no matter what bad ever happens to him. No matter how many people tell him they don't want to work with him, no matter how many times people tell him he's wrong, no matter how many times he debates on it and loses, he's going to maintain the fact that he's going to be against trans people no matter what. All right? So, if that's the case, I'd like to talk a little bit about this guy, this very interesting, curious guy. Almost 1 year ago to the date, Graham Linehan tweeted, "People are waking up. 2023 is the year we win. Hashtag down with this sort of thing." Absolutely down with that sort of thing. Fingers crossed. So good to see you. Vindication is the sweetest taste. Welcome back. This is after he got unbanned after being banned originally on normal Twitter and then getting unbanned on Elon's Twitter because he brought all the filth back to the website. Almost 1 year to the date. After that message he tweeted out, this is Graham's friend, Artie Morty, on his podcast that he runs.
And in the meantime, this is so exhausting and tiring. I am just so, I've lost all of my friends. I'm utterly lonely. I'm utterly, it's so hard to find any kind of work because I'm so tainted. Just having normal views. I can't wait for the tide to shift, but it's going to be a little while still. It's very depressing.
It's very depressing. My life is basically over. Nobody wants anything to do with me. Nobody wants me to work for them. Nobody's my friend anymore. And I'm just called a loser and a freak and a bigot 24/7. And I'm just so normal. I'm like totally normal. I hold all the views that everybody does, but somehow only I'm the one that's getting attacked like this. It's almost like you're not normal. It's almost like what you're doing actually isn't normal. You aren't normal at all, actually. And not only are you so abnormal, you're abnormal to the point where people not only don't like you, they hate you and don't want anything to do with you. It doesn't seem normal to me. Normal people don't get treated like that on a daily basis. Normal people don't have to make podcasts about how hated they are. That's not what normal people do. Normal people go through normal people lives. This guy doesn't. And the thing is, that's not even his real name. If it sounds like a stupid name, it's because he made it himself and gave it to him. His name is not Artie Morty. I don't know what his name is. I don't really care to figure it out because he's a nobody transphobe freak. And it doesn't even really matter. What does matter, though, is how much these people's lives suck. And that's what I really want to talk about here. The history, like a little bit of this Graham Linehan guy who went from one of Ireland's largest comedy writers to a bottom of the barrel transphobe freak who gets no work and no clout and no recognition and spends most of his time just complaining online about how much other people hate him. This guy went from having shows in Hollywood to his wife and kids leaving him because he spends so much time online on the internet complaining about trans people, children, dunking on trans kids, dunking on other minorities, dunking on women who accept trans people and love trans people when he absolutely doesn't. That's all he spends his time doing. So his wife left him. So he joined the divorced dad crew of like Elon Musk and Kanye West and all these other guys who were just completely divorced, and Eliza Schaefer as well, that guy. And it's just sad. It's just really sad. And it really shows you these people live sad lives. Divorced dad squad. Yeah. These people live sad lives where their hatred that they spew just not only rots and harms the people that they're angry against, but it also harms them in their own individual lives. When you bring a hate into your heart, this is what happens. This is what happens to your to the people around you. People don't want anything to do with you. And I'm glad we're seeing this type of stuff because there are some people out there who are able to get away with this by building a platform big enough for them to be immune to this type of stuff, but not everybody is. And they may be able to mitigate some of those things. They may be able to find success in the type of things that they're building, but not everybody is. And somebody who's basically almost completely untalented outside of writing very specific Irish humor this Graham Linehan guy, he's not found almost any success doing anything else besides complaining about how much people hate him and don't like him. I mean, his YouTube channel, 24,000 subscribers, I wouldn't say necessarily a really small YouTube channel, but not one that's bringing in like a bunch of money, and he's not some super successful person that everybody is talking about. He's actually still pretty small and quite unknown. He was very successful in the work that he was doing, but he threw it all away just specifically to just trash on trans people, because that's his whole entire life now. Yeah, listen up, liberal. My wife left me. Just to even get an idea, I just want to look at the beginning of his Wikipedia page here, because it'll give you an idea of how successful this guy actually was before he lost almost everything. He was an Irish writer. He created or co-created sitcoms Father Ted from 1995 to 1998, Black Books from 2000 to 2004, and The IT Crowd 2006 to 2013 is also written for shows including Count Arthur's Song, Brass Eye, and The Fast Show. Early in his career, he partnered with Arthur Matthews. Linehan has also won 5 BAFTA awards, including Best Writer Comedy for The IT Crowd in 2014. All right. This is what he had. The guy was actually winning awards. He was going to comedy shows. And if you haven't heard of some of these shows, I get it. That's fine. These are shows that are pretty central in Ireland. If you're an Irish person or you know Irish people who are from Ireland, these are shows that people really appreciate. It's like Irish The Office. Okay, we'll say it like that. It's like Irish The Office. They're pretty popular. They're well respected. Or like Friends, you know, like an old show, or like Full House or something, right? IT Crowd Writer, that sucks, right? Pretty respectable. But then after 2014, after the last episode, he decided to throw it all away. All right. And instead become just a complete anti-trans activist. And that's like basically it. He doesn't do almost anything else besides that. That's almost exactly all he does with the rest of his time. And I find it really unfortunate, because he seems talented enough to be able to make it pretty far. But instead of doing that, he just hates trans people instead. And he calls himself Glinner, and he has this whole podcast where for 165 episodes, he talks about how terrible trans people are, how terrible trans activists are, and how the end of times for them is finally coming, and everybody's going to finally wake up and realize that they were totally right the entire time, and everybody else was wrong, and the whole trans nightmare is going to finally end, and he's going to be vindicated, and then his show's going to be back online, and then everything's going to be fine, and then his wife's going to come back to him, and he's going to be able to see his kids again. But it doesn't really work out like that. It seems like instead of that happening, it's going the complete opposite way, and his life's completely falling apart. I want to watch this. This is Trigonometry with the most British people, the most British looking people you've ever seen in your entire life. Like, you look at this guy. This guy looks physically British. Like, if like the British phenotype exists, that's a British guy right there. I have never seen somebody more British than that man right there. He's like a slightly deformed John Oliver, you know what I mean? He looks like if John Oliver he looks like if John Oliver was made out of marshmallow and he was put in the microwave for 3 seconds. He looks like if John Oliver was made out of really wet clay and somebody knocked into the desk. Know what I mean? Anyways, look at this sad little yap session.
Comedy production companies in the UK. When did it start affecting your career? When did you start noticing colleagues turning against you?
Well, it didn't really. One of the things about cancellation, especially during COVID, was that it all just happened silently. You know, you don't really. Still, I don't. There may be some people who just think I'm great and think I'm completely on the right track, but I can't call them to face another disappointment. You know, and people, you know. Yeah, they just didn't announce, well, Graham Lennon's a non-person now. It just kind of happens.
But hold on, they're sitting on your musical now, aren't they?
Yeah.
Patrick. So you clearly know that they have the rights to it. They're not going to let you do it.
They have half the rights, and the other half are owned by me, author, and Neil Hannon. Yeah. And they're sitting on it in what I think is an act of kind of preemptive cultural vandalism, simply because I've stood up for women's rights, you know, and I've stood against the medicalization of children, which I would argue is should be everyone's priority. Yeah. You know what I mean? So we have the musical. We had it on its feet. We put it on a few times. There were even little dance routines, you know, to try and sell it to people who might put money in, all this sort of stuff. And now they're just sitting on it. It should be on. It should be on. It should have been on for the last 2 years, you know. The other day I had to hide my car in case it's repossessed. That's how bad my money situation is at the moment.
So here's the thing. So this little sad sap story yap session is so interesting when you realize some of the backstory behind it. What he's basically talking about is that he wrote a musical. He wrote a Father Ted musical. Father Ted is one of the famous works of comedy, Irish comedy, that he wrote. There's a musical that he wrote of it, little dance moves, and he wanted to sell it so it could be performed in studios. He worked with a company before he started to get like giga transphobic, and they were about to put it on. What happened is that he decided to turn into a super duper mega triple omega quadruple sextuple transphobe, and spend all of his days just like shitting on trans people, minorities and women who and men, basically everybody who support trans people, and basically calling trans people freaks and abominations that must be stopped, and trans activists are like child abusers and whatnot, all that type of stuff, right? All the type of stuff that you would imagine a company doesn't want any part of. When that happened, he's saying that they're now sitting on it and there's nothing that they can do, and he's so sad and they're not paying him. What happened actually in the real world, what happened is that they were like, hey, we don't want to work with you anymore. You're a weirdo. You're not built different. You are different, and we don't like it. So here, we're going to pay you $500,000 to shut the fuck up. We're going to pay you $500,000 to step away from this, and you get the $500, we get to put the show on, and you have nothing to do with it, okay? That was the deal that they actually provided to him. My bad. I'm sorry. Not $500,000, $200,000. They offered him $200,000 to just shut the hell up and stop being a weirdo, but he decided to not do it. It was $200,000 to remove his name from the Father Ted musical, but he decided instead of doing that, he was just going to not do that and just not have any money and not have the musical either. So they decided, oh, okay, we're not going to work with you anymore. We don't want anything to do with this. I'm good. And then they left. And now he's poor. And so now he like threw away hundreds of thousands of dollars because he just wanted to be like a little freak about it. He had his wife divorce him and his kids not show up anymore. He doesn't have a musical. He's not respected anymore, and he has to go on YouTube channels and ask for them to pay him to show up so he can cry about how poor he is. That's how far this man has fallen from grace, all simply because he hates trans people. It's kind of crazy how that works out, isn't it? It's kind of sad how that happens, how you can lose so much. And you're wondering, why doesn't this happen to other people? Well, it kind of does. The only difference is here in the United States, we have a much larger conservative apparatus that pays people so much money to do terrible things. Because even if you do lose this type of stuff, you have the conservative apparatus. They'll like pay for your GoFundMe, and you'll be on like TV shows and radio shows, and there's a whole market out there of being an oppressed conservative. Being an oppressed conservative makes you so much money. Just look at people. Just look at all the people who like market themselves as oppressed conservative. It's sad. It's sad to see how much money they can filter off of being just that, but not every place does it. And not everybody is as good enough or charismatic enough or funny enough to be able to abuse that system to be able to make more cash and money off of it. Graham is one of those people who can't do it. And it's very clear that he can't do it because it seems like he's still poor, even though he should have enough money and should have enough resources to be able to not be poor. Yeah, you get back to the instant you get canceled. The second you get canceled, you're going to have so much money flowing in.
You know, I should have a musical on. It should be up and running for like 3 years. But because of this ridiculous and, you know, homophobic, misogynistic movement, it was just stolen. And all Hattrick and my colleagues would have to do would be to say, of course women should have fair sports. Of course children shouldn't be mutilated and sterilized. Do you know what I mean? These are not controversial positions to hold. But for some reason, they refuse to do it.
It's almost like when you think of everybody as like evil and wanting evil things to happen 24/7, that it doesn't actually make any sense to you, that you put yourself in the position where you live in a world where everybody is evil and you're the only cool, reasonable, nice one, making it hard for you to understand other people's point of view. It's kind of weird how that works out. And some people may be like, but Shark, don't you do that sometimes? I spend time to actually understand what conservatives believe. I say it constantly that I don't actually genuinely think that conservatives are these like mustachioed Sunday, midday cartoon villain of the week, sitting in their giant throne swivel chair at a big oak desk made from the last of an extinct tree, wearing a pelt made of extinct animals that they specifically made extinct, petting a white cat in front of a fireplace, going, like petting their mustache with the other hand, going, moo ha ha, I can't wait until I can figure out a new way to make the world a worse place. I love evil. I love doing evil and being evil. I don't mustache twirling villain, right? I don't do that. I don't think your average conservative is like Dick Dastardly. But this guy genuinely believes that trans people go around like, boy, I can't wait till I can abuse another child today. Boy, I love abusing children. Like, that's what he genuinely believes people go around and doing. And so now he lives in a little fantasy world where he can't even understand how I just say normal. All I do is do normal things and say normal things that everybody believes, but everybody treats me so terribly. It's almost like people don't actually believe that. It's actually almost like they don't. It's almost like when you say, I believe a girl should have fair sports, what you mean is that this minority group should be banned from participating in sports. It's almost like when you try to say something positive, what you actually mean is a negative that's what people actually don't agree with. Instead of finding like a little middle ground where people can find some agreement with, where we can be like, yeah, be like we can't just ban people from sports, but maybe you should be on like testosterone or estrogen for some like specific amount of time, or maybe like you could do individual testing or like this, that, or give some idea. It's just like, fuck you, minority, I hate you. And that's like all that he can possibly think of. And so obviously he thinks this because he can't imagine somebody disagreeing with him, because he's tricked himself into believing that all of the things he believes is just super nice and normal by huffing his own farts. This is a perfect, Graham Linehan is such a perfect example of somebody who drank their own Kool-Aid. They poison themselves. The mind poison that they're supposed to give to other people to convince them through rhetoric is rhetoric that he personally believes himself. He's falling victim to his own false reality. You think they'll try to ban trans race car drivers? They've already tried to ban trans fishers. Now they don't want trans people to be able to join like fishing competitions because they think trans people have like an unfair advantage in fishing. They've already tried to ban trans people from chess competitions because he thinks that trans women have an unfair advantage against cis women in chess. This is what we're doing right now. This is the people we're dealing with. They think trans people have an advantage in pool. It's not about people having a fair sport or a not fair sport. It's the fact that they just simply don't believe that these people should exist at all. And so their affirmation by being allowed in just public space is something that they obviously disagree with. But moving on with this.
And the thing that's also heartbreaking, yet it says a lot about this case, is a musical of Father Ted.
Yeah.
One of the most beloved sitcoms of the last 30 odd years, which is still shown, which is still quoted, which the character of Father Dougal is now a staple when people talk about comedy and modern comedy. This would have sold out immediately.
Whoever puts this out is basically printing money.
Yeah, but it's not being stopped because of the public. It's being stopped because theatres are refusing to put it on. And Hattrick and my colleagues are refusing to defend me and say, this is ridiculous and make an issue out of it.
Even so,
it's not even. So once again, he just said that because first he was like, the company didn't want to help me, but now he's like, even my colleagues don't want to help me. Nobody likes this guy, dude. If everybody around you hates you, it's probably not everybody else's fault. It's probably you. You probably suck ass. You probably suck Hershey squirt, nasty, unwashed ass. You probably suck, bro. I don't know what to tell you. You suck. You suck.
Colleagues, the people that you wrote this with.
Yeah. Like I spoke to some of them afterwards, and again, I mean, it's so weird. this is what I mean when I say when you're at the center of it, it's hard to know what's going on, because they didn't seem to understand the issues. You bring them up and it's like it's the first time you've told them about it. And over the years, they had seen what had been happening to me. They'd seen me lose opportunities. I've been telling them exactly what the problem was, been getting largely agreement, you know.
His voice is wavering. He's going to cry.
Seen, again, as a kind of a hobby I have, you know. It's like, no, they're sterile.
Honestly, yes. You hating on trans people is your hobby. Yeah. He made actually hating on trans people his hobby. It's like it's something that he does for fun in his spare time, and they're like, bro, can you keep that away from work? And that's something that he apparently just can't do.
Sterilizing a generation of gay kids. They're telling gay kids that they're actually straight, but they were born in the wrong body, and they need drugs and surgery to take care of that problem. That's evil, and I cannot get anyone to stand by my side and say, yeah, you're right, that's evil. You know?
It's almost like, no, you will not be back, actually, because we're leaving. But it's almost like that
in a minute. But
it's almost like you're just a loser and nobody wants anything to do with you. That's so weird. That's so interesting. And with that being said, trans rights have only moved forward in that time. Trans rights have only gotten better in that time. And yeah, there have been some setbacks, but on the whole, trans people's lives legally in many places are better than they were a little while ago. So he's just failing. He's thrown away his entire life and success, his family, for literally nothing. And it's quite sad. Also, he did a recent interview with this guy Andrew Gold, and it's also pretty telling as well, and pretty interesting.
Just before off camera, I mean, the first thing that you just said to me was, you know, I got a round of applause. I hope you don't mind me saying, I got a round of applause. I need to message my mum. It's meeting you. It's
standing ovation.
No, but it's instantly clear that this has been a really turbulent time for you, and that you're incredibly it's still very raw for you. You're very emotional about it.
Yeah, it's sometimes, and also, you know, because of the stress of when your book comes out, you know, I'm not sleeping great at the moment, so you get a bit emotional and weepy, you know, and I have to guard against it, because otherwise I'll be doing it all the time, you know. But yeah, it makes me emotional, and I'm extremely moved when, you know, as happened at the interview today, people stood up for me. You know, it means the world, you know, and you know, most of the day is spent reading about what a terrible monster I am. So when something like that happens, yeah, it's very special. My mum will be delighted.
What is it like for your mum? Because I know from experience that when you...
My mom, she finally, bro's actually, people hate him so much that his mom came out to say that I don't hate you, and he like fell to his knees. Just like for that back, right? He fell to his knees. He's like, I can't imagine this. I can't believe this. It's just so interesting. It's just really interesting, right? They touch on him and J.K. Rowling as well.
I can't remember the first time, but I do remember that I was a kind of a harbinger of, is it harbinger or harbinger? But a harbinger, it is now, was, you know, I liked the tweet, you know. It was only then I realized that there was an entire kind of class of people online who were kind of keeping an eye on people's likes and seeing what they were you know, endorsing. And it was literally a tweet saying, you know, people with gender dysphoria need the best care you can possibly get. And at the same time, women need single-sex spaces, you know? And I like that tweet, and it immediately started going out.
So he's old and stupid. On Twitter, if you didn't know, if you don't use Twitter, God bless. On Twitter, crazy, but it shows your followers what you like. When you leave likes on things, there's a chance that that post will actually pop up in your followers follow page, like homepage. Like they'll see it, they'll be like, you liked it. And so it's not that people were just digging through his likes constantly. It showed up on their page. He put it on their page. And then he's like, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe this happened. And now, and listen, here's the thing. You can't just ban trans people from women's spaces. If those spaces are supposed to be about like keeping women safe, trans people don't make them unsafe. That's just a fact of the world. It just doesn't happen. Now, if this is the case, right, and we understand that, then a lot of the rhetoric coming back to that is usually that, well, women typically some women feel unsafe around trans people. Okay, well, that's not a cause for banning a minority group from a space because the minority group makes some people feel unsafe. I can imagine back in the day that like a bunch of white women felt really like uncomfortable and scared around like black people when they were allowed into the diner. But that doesn't mean that black people should remain banned because white people felt uncomfortable around them. That's not how that works. That's a you problem at that point. Because trans people, trans women are highly susceptible to assault, just like cis women can be at times. And so the fact that you want to ban them from these spaces, even though they're as likely, or in some cases even more likely of being abused, all you're saying is I want more people to have less abuse resources, which is not something you're ever going to see me be for. That's not going to happen. So this is Graham Linan's story at the moment, as a sad, basically washed up loser who spends his time giving pity stories to people for peanuts because he can't keep a job, he can't keep a friend, he can't even keep his own family together based on him completely hating trans people to the point of just losing everything he owns. It's a sad, sick world that this man lives in, but at least he's suffering with it while other people aren't. Fuck you, Graham. I hope it hurts. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. If you're enjoying the content, hit the subscribe button. If you don't, it'll make Boo very sad. I know a bunch of you who are watching are not subscribed. Join the frenzy. You won't regret it. Thank you, Boo.